As a medical student, I usually study case histories. Today I am one. My story begins long before I was born. My great-grandmother on my father's side had yellowish patches around her eyes. We call that symptomasmata, and it's a visible sign of high cholesterol. Because of that, she became one of the very first people in the Netherlands to be tested for familial hypercholesterolemia, an inherited lipid disorder. She passed it on to my grandfather, who was told not to be able to live to see 50. He's now 78, still healthy, even still does volunteer work, and has never had cardiovascular disease, all as a result of early testing, treatment, and management. My father also inherited FH and lives a healthy, active life too. So when I was very young, cascade pediatric testing was offered to me. But the results were quite surprising. I did not have FH, which affects about 1 in 300 people. But I did have elevated lipoprotein A, which is another inherited lipid disorder that affects 1 in 5. In other words, I escaped one genetic lottery only to win another. From there, reverse cascade screening revealed that my mother also carried elevated Lp(a). And suddenly our family history started to make sense. The premature heart attack that took my grandfather on my mother's side at 54 was no longer bad luck. Now it was part of a family pattern of cardiovascular disease. For me, being diagnosed young was not a burden. In fact, I would say it was a benefit. I learned how to live with it quite early. And Professor Albert Wigman, who you will also be hearing here later on, gave me the 5 golden rules as a child. They're the following: eat your vegetables, take your medicine, exercise regularly, never smoke, and most important, always look left and right before crossing the road. Simple advice, but it gave me both direction and resilience. My condition is not a shadow over my life. It is a framework for my personal health. Today I'm a medical student, aiming to specialize in vascular medicine and lipidology. That means something very important. I see both worlds. I see the world of lived experience, and I see the world of the clinic. And I also see the gaps. Families were never offered testing despite very clear family history. Young people left without support to handle the mental weight of lifelong risk. And promising research on new therapies that rarely reaches those who need help the most. These are the gaps that we must close, and we must do that together. That is why patient involvement and true ambassadorship matters so deeply. And in my role as a patient ambassador with the FH Europe Foundation, I see every day how teamwork and collaboration between professionals and patients can turn these gaps into bridges. In the Netherlands, I was quite lucky. Lucky that FH screening was already in place. Lucky that a pediatrician thought to add Lp(a) to my test. Lucky that my family was guided and supported. But this kind of luck should not be a lottery. It should be the standard across Europe. Because early testing is not just about protecting individuals. It prevents suffering across families, across generations. It keeps people healthier for longer, able to work, to study, to contribute. It also means fewer hospitalizations, fewer cardiovascular events, even fewer costs for health systems. Now, this session is called Next Generation. I sit here as part of that next generation, a young person living with elevated Lp(a) and a future doctor. My story shows what is possible when screening is in place. Now imagine if this were true for every family in Europe. So my message is quite simple. Systematic testing for FH and elevated Lp(a) must be a cornerstone of the European cardiovascular health plan. Because early detection not only saves lives, it saves futures across entire generations. Thank you for your time.